My family still treats me like a child, but this Christmas, they took it too far. When they made me sit at the kids' table, I finally had enough, and walked out. I had a feeling this Christmas dinner would be a disaster the moment I walked in. It's not like I didn't know what I was walking into. It's always the same. But this year, I was determined to hold it together, despite everything. Let me introduce myself. I'm Maya, the youngest of 4 siblings. But being the youngest has never meant anything sweet or cute in my family. If anything, it's always been the reason they talked down to me. I'm used to it at this point. I'm 28 now. But to them, I'm still the baby. I don't have a husband or kids like my older siblings, but I've been successful in other ways. I have a career I'm proud of, a small but loyal group of friends, and a sense of independence they can't seem to grasp. For them, it's always been about marriage and kids. Nothing else matters. Christmas dinner was always a big deal for our family. It's one of the few times of the year when we all gather at my parents' house, which is this massive old Victorian place that's been in the family for generations. It's a house that looks perfect for family photos, but is a nightmare to clean. I'd always hated the place. It's cold and distant, just like my parents. But it's tradition, so every year, I go. Even though I'd rather be anywhere else, I go. Because, family. I showed up just after everyone else. My oldest brother, Chris, was already there with his wife and 3 kids, loudly setting up the table. As if they owned the place. Then there was Amy, my sister, with her husband and their baby. Always perfect, always polished, always showing off their ideal life. My parents were in the kitchen, bustling around, acting as if they had everything under control while managing to make everyone feel like they were still 5 years old. As usual, I slipped in quietly, hoping to avoid the drama that was sure to unfold. When my mom saw me, her face lit up with that fake smile she always wore. The kind that made me feel like I wasn't really welcome, but I was tolerated for the sake of the holiday. "Maya, sweetie," she said, giving me a hug that felt more obligatory than affectionate. "So glad you could make it. Go ahead and grab a seat." I barely had time to respond before my dad called from the other room. His voice booming with that authority he used when he wanted to remind everyone he was still the man of the house. "Dinner's about ready. Amy, get the kids situated, please." I stood there for a moment, not sure what to do. I wanted to say something, but it was Christmas. I didn't want to make a scene yet. That's when my mom, in that subtle way she had of making everything feel like a lesson, spoke again. "Maya, why don't you sit at the kids' table? We've got a special spot for you there, with the cousins." I froze. I couldn't believe it. My mom, with her sweet, saccharine tone, had just asked me to sit at the kids' table. The one they set up every year with a mismatched array of chairs, paper plates, and half-hearted decorations. I glanced over to the dining room. The adults' table was set up beautifully, with fancy china, glasses of wine, and candles that gave the whole thing an elegant, grown-up vibe. There, at the head of the table, was my dad, looking as smug as ever, surrounded by my married siblings. No room for me, though. I looked back at my mom, trying to hold back the anger bubbling inside me. I could feel the familiar sting, the one I always got when they tried to remind me that I wasn't good enough in their eyes. It wasn't the first time they'd made me feel small, but this was different. This wasn't just a little comment or a side eye. This was deliberate. They knew what they were doing. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Sure, Mom, thanks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled, too, but there was something in her expression. Something that said she didn't really care about how I felt. This was all about keeping up appearances, making sure everything was perfect. I don't think she even realized how much it hurt to be dismissed like that. Without saying another word, I walked over to the kids' table, my stomach turning with every step. It wasn't like I expected anything better, but for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd treat me like an adult. I sat down at the little plastic chair, surrounded by toddlers who were more interested in their mashed potatoes than the awkward silence I felt in the air. My cousins were in their own little world, ignoring me completely. I stared at the plates in front of me, sloppy, unappetizing. It was like they didn't even try to make it look good. I could have sworn I saw one of the toddlers drop a chunk of broccoli under the table, and I wanted to scream. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just about the table. This wasn't about tradition or the holiday spirit. This was about them seeing me as less than. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I stood up quietly, the weight of the decision pressing on me. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to shout or make a scene. I just grabbed my coat, slung it over my shoulder, and walked straight for the door. As I opened it, my mom's voice called out, almost too late. "Maya? Where are you going?" she asked. Her voice now laced with confusion and a hint of irritation. I didn't look back. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice cold. "Enjoy your dinner." The door slammed behind me. The cold air hit me like a wave, but I didn't care. My car was parked just down the street, and I was out of there. The sound of my parents' frantic calls fading in the distance. I drove for hours, aimlessly, until I finally ended up at a quiet diner, sitting in a booth by myself. I ordered something warm, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this much rage and relief all at once. That's when my phone started blowing up. Messages, missed calls, the usual. I glanced at the screen. It was my family, Chris, Amy, even my dad, all calling and texting. But the one that stood out the most was from my mom. "Where are you? We need to talk." "This isn't funny, Maya." I felt a smirk tug at my lips, the kind that had been brewing all evening. I wasn't about to pick up, though. The ball was in my court now. They had no idea what was coming. I set my phone down and sipped my coffee, watching the steam curl up into the air. What would I do next? That was the question. And trust me, they wouldn't like the answer. I sat in that diner for what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzing every few minutes. The messages grew more desperate, each one trying to reel me back into their little game. Chris sent me one first. "Maya, this isn't funny. Where are you?" It was followed by another from Amy. "Mom is freaking out. We just want you back." Then my dad. "Come on. Don't act like a child. Get back here." I didn't respond. I didn't owe them an explanation. They had made their choice when they treated me like a second-class citizen at their precious dinner. All I had wanted was to be treated like an adult, but instead, they had decided I was still the baby who needed to be tucked away with the toddlers. After about an hour, I finally picked up my phone to check the messages again. The tension was starting to feel thick. Like they were starting to realize I wasn't going to just roll over. Then my mom's text popped up and it made my stomach twist. "Maya, I don't understand why you're doing this. Your siblings are concerned and this is ruining Christmas. Don't make this about you. You're being selfish." I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a wave of anger rise again. Selfish? They were the ones being selfish. The whole night had been about their image, their expectations. I had been nothing but a piece in their little puzzle of perfection. But to her, I was the problem. Typical. I didn't know whether I was supposed to laugh or cry at this point. Instead, I just hit the block button on her number. She wasn't going to manipulate me into feeling guilty. Not this time. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. This wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. I had a plan. I had been wronged by every single one of them. And tonight, I was going to make sure they knew just how much they messed up. Later that evening, after I had finished my meal and the adrenaline had worn off a bit, I decided it was time. I pulled up the family group chat, where they usually all vented about everything and anything. There were already a dozen messages about me. "This is ridiculous. She's acting like a child. What's the big deal? We didn't mean it like that. I think she's just overreacting." I scrolled through them, my fingers itching. I knew I could just ignore it, but that would have been the easy way out. No, I needed them to feel it. I needed them to understand that their treatment of me had consequences. I started typing, slowly at first, but then my words picked up speed. It wasn't just about tonight. It was about everything they had done to me over the years. You guys don't get it, do you? You really don't. This isn't just about a seat at the table. It's about how you've treated me my entire life. Like I'm not good enough. Like I'm invisible unless you need something from me. I'm the only one who doesn't get praised for following the same script you all did: get married, have kids, play the game. But I've built my own life, and I'm doing just fine, so maybe it's time you all recognize that. I paused before hitting send, letting the weight of my words sink in. For the first time in forever, I felt like I had control over the situation. I wasn't begging for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to be their little project. I pressed send. It didn't take long for the messages to flood in. My phone pinged over and over, each message more frantic than the last. The first one was from my dad. "Maya, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Get over yourself." Amy quickly followed. "You can't just leave like that and not expect everyone to be upset. What did you think was going to happen?" Chris chimed in. "We didn't do anything wrong, Maya. You need to calm down and come back before we're all ruined by your tantrum." Each message hit harder than the last. They still didn't get it. They were still trying to pin it on me. Still making it my fault that they treated me like garbage. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while now. I opened up the Photos app on my phone and started scrolling. There it was, an old picture of our family, taken years ago, right before things really started to fall apart. A perfect Christmas photo, with everyone smiling and happy. Everyone except me, that is. I was there, of course, forced into the picture like an afterthought. But I knew the truth behind the smiles. I knew what had been said, what had been implied, all those years. I took that photo and, without hesitation, posted it in the family group chat. But this time, I added a caption: "Here's to the perfect family, always making sure the youngest one knows their place." Then I turned off my phone. I let the silence settle around me, feeling like I was finally free from their chains. I didn't know what would happen next, but I didn't care. They had pushed me too far. And now I was done. I didn't check my phone for hours. It was almost surreal. Sitting there without the constant buzzing and pinging from their desperate texts. The silence was oddly calming, and I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. For once, I wasn't the one trying to appease them. I stayed up late, just thinking. I knew what they'd be saying behind my back, even though they didn't have the nerve to say it to my face. My siblings, especially Chris, probably thought I was overreacting, thinking I was just being the drama queen of the family again. But I wasn't. I was done playing the role they had written for me. And if they couldn't understand that, well, I'd let them deal with the fallout. Eventually, I plugged my phone into charge and, with a sigh, checked it again. The notifications were as relentless as I expected. Dozens of missed calls. Texts that ranged from angry to apologetic, but all of them coded in an underlying frustration. I scrolled through them all, reading their words with a sense of grim satisfaction. They were unraveling, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them to put everything back together. My mom's text was the longest. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Maya. You're acting like this is about us when it's really about you. You can't just run away from your family like this. You're tearing us apart. Please come back. Christmas is ruined without you. This isn't who you are." There it was, the guilt trip. The attempt to twist the situation so that I was the bad guy. They always did this. Made me feel like I was the one causing trouble for wanting to be treated like a grown-up. Then my dad's message. "This is childish. We need to talk about this when you calm down. And of course, Chris, if you think walking out of the dinner was going to make a statement, you're wrong. You're making it worse. You owe us an apology." An apology? For what? For standing up for myself for once? For demanding to be seen as an equal in a family that only valued me when it suited them? No. I wasn't apologizing for anything. But then, there was Amy's message. It was different from the others. It wasn't angry or demanding. It was almost pleading. "Maya, I know you're upset. And I understand why, but this isn't the way to fix things. You're my sister, and I love you, but you're pushing everyone away. Please, just come home. We can talk about this. It's Christmas, for God's sake. I stared at her words for a while. I had always been close to Amy. She was the one who used to defend me when the others would gang up on me as a kid. But now, I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. Not after everything she had let slide, everything she had silently endorsed when she knew it. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain to her that I wasn't being a diva or causing drama, that I was standing up for myself, that I was tired of being treated like the perpetual child in the family. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I typed out a short reply. I'll think about it. I sent it and set my phone down, feeling a pang of guilt. But I shook it off. I knew I couldn't go back to that table, not without a serious change in how they viewed me. And I wasn't about to let them brush this under the rug like it was nothing. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. Some were from family friends, asking where I was. They were genuinely concerned, but I didn't feel like explaining myself to anyone who wasn't part of the problem. And then, of course, there was a barrage of calls from my mom. But there was one message that stood out. It was from Amy again. Maya, I've been talking to Chris and Mom. They're really upset, and honestly, so am I. We're a family. You can't just isolate yourself from us like this. If you don't come home soon, it's going to get worse. Please don't make this more complicated than it has to be. More pressure, more manipulation, and still no understanding of what I was going through. They weren't hearing me. They weren't listening. I knew what they were doing, what they always did. They were trying to guilt me into coming back, trying to make me feel like the one causing all the problems, when in reality, it was their refusal to see me as anything more than the youngest child that had been the problem all along. I picked up my phone, opened the group chat, and stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I debated what to say. I wanted to make my stand, to make them understand exactly why I was done with their treatment of me. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I was ready to go back yet. Not until I was certain they had changed. Until I was certain they saw me for who I really was. And then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my dad. Maya, we need to talk. You can't just keep running away. You're going to regret this. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The same words, the same manipulative guilt trip. I could feel the tension building, like the walls were closing in around me. But I didn't respond. Not yet. The day dragged on, and with every hour, I felt the pressure of their texts, their calls, their attempts to reel me back into their orbit. But no matter how many times my phone buzzed, I kept my distance. I had made my choice, and I wasn't about to let them bully me back into the role they had cast me in. As evening approached, I found myself sitting alone, staring at the empty chair across from me, where I would have been sitting if I had gone back. A part of me, an old part, wanted to give in, to go back and make nice. It was Christmas, after all. A time for family, for togetherness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I went back now, it would be like admitting I wasn't worth fighting for. That all those years of being pushed aside were just fine. That they were right, and I was just being dramatic. I thought about the photo I posted in the group chat, the one where I was forced into a smile, shoved to the side like I was an afterthought. That picture had said everything I needed to say. I wasn't just upset about tonight. I was upset about every year they had treated me like this. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering where I was relegated to the back seat, never given a voice. They thought I'd just roll over and accept it, like I always had. But not this time. And then the phone rang again. This time. It was my mom. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button, but something inside me told me to pick up. Maybe I was finally ready to hear what she had to say. Or maybe I was just curious how far they would go to make me feel guilty. I took a deep breath and pressed the green button. Maya, my mom's voice came through, sounding tired, exasperated. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. I stayed silent, letting the words hang in the air. She waited for me to respond. But I didn't say anything. Look, she continued, we're family. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're pushing everyone away. Your dad is upset. Chris is upset. She paused, clearly trying to gather her words. I'm upset, Maya. I almost laughed. They were upset. After everything they had put me through, they had the audacity to say that? I could feel the old anger bubbling up, but I swallowed it down. Not wanting to let her see how much she still got to me. I'm not pushing anyone away, Mom, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm just not playing your game anymore. I'm not going to sit at the kids' table, be treated like I'm invisible, and pretend everything's fine. She was quiet for a moment. I could almost hear her processing my words, trying to figure out how to turn the conversation back into a guilt trip. You can't just leave us hanging like this. Your dad's trying to make Christmas special. The whole family is here. It's not just about you, Maya, she finally said, her voice almost pleading. You're breaking the family apart. You know, I've spent my entire life trying to make everything work, trying to fit into the mold you all created for me. But no one ever saw me, did they? I shot back. You didn't want me as an adult, Mom. You wanted me to stay the little kid forever. And tonight was the last straw. She was silent again, and I could tell it was hitting her. For the first time, she was hearing what I was really saying. It wasn't just about the seat at the dinner table. It was about how I'd been treated all my life. I'm sorry, Maya, she said finally, but her voice was soft, uncertain. I didn't know you felt that way. Yeah, well, it took me a long time to realize it. Too, I replied, my voice softening just a little, but I'm done pretending. There was a long pause, and I could feel the tension in the air, even over the phone. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally being heard. Like I had control over the situation. And it felt good. It felt empowering. Finally, she sighed. I get it. I really do. But I'm still your mother, and I just want us to be a family again. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. There was a time when I would have run back to them, desperate to make everything okay. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had learned a hard way that they would never change unless I forced them to see me. To see me as an equal. I'll think about it, I said. Repeating my earlier response, but this time it was different. It wasn't about me caving in. It was about taking my time. It was about them realizing that I wasn't just some afterthought. That I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their toxic cycle without change. All right, my mom said softly. I hope you'll come back soon. I just want you to be happy. I hung up the phone and sat back, breathing deeply. It wasn't over. It wasn't a neat, clean resolution. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of the situation. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me for who I really was. I put my phone down and stared out the window, watching the snow fall softly in the darkness. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free. And as for Christmas? It wasn't ruined. Because for the first time in my life, I was going to take care of me. The rest could wait. As I sat there, letting the snow fall gently outside, I couldn't help but wonder, did I do the right thing? Or did I just walk away from something that could have been fixed? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. For more videos like this, remember to like and subscribe.